If Gandalf were to keep a journal, what kind of things would he put in that journal? Well, I think Gandalf would keep a journal full of his own aphorisms. Hey, welcome to Park Notes. I'm Parker Settecase. I'm a philosopher and theologian, and this is a channel where I help you study, think, and read more deeply. In this video, I want to talk about the aphorism, the pure and perfect form, the philosophical aphorism, what philosophers used to do. And I want to talk about this because I think the aphorism needs a renaissance. I think that keeping a book of aphorisms will help you think like a philosophical sage and can even help you with your own critical thinking skills. So I want to argue that if Gandalf kept a journal with him on his journeys, he would fill it with his aphorisms. But in order to support that argument, I'm going to need to define what an aphorism is. Then I'm going to show you that Gandalf, both in the movies and in the books, constantly had an aphorism on his lips ready to give his companions. Then I'll give you guys some book recommendations from some of my favorite philosophical sages who kept their own books of aphorisms. And I'll finish by sharing just a couple of my own aphorisms with you guys from my book of aphorisms. So hopefully that's not too cringe-inducing, but I just got started with this process, so you got to give me some slack. All right, hopefully I don't say aphorisms too many more times. Don't drink every time I say aphorism because that will be super duper dangerous. So make sure you watch the full video to get a definition of aphorisms, to hear Gandalf's aphorisms, to hear some from philosophical sages, and to hear some from a dummy like me. But like I said, keeping a book of aphorisms can help you with your critical thinking skills. And that reminds me of one of my other favorite tools for sharpening my own critical thinking skills, Brilliant. Brilliant is where you learn by doing. It has thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and AI. So what is Brilliant? Well, it's a learning platform designed to be uniquely effective. They have this first principles approach, which helps you build understanding from the ground up. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that let you play with concepts as you learn, which is a method proven to be 6 times more effective than just watching lecture videos. And you know the content is good because Brilliant is crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google, and more. Brilliant is awesome. It helps you build critical thinking skills through problem solving, not memorizing. So while you're building real knowledge on specific topics, you'll also become a better thinker. Now, I decided to go into the softer sciences like theology and philosophy because I'm not super good at math, but I study analytic theology and analytic philosophy, which uses a bunch of logic and math notation. So I have to learn some math and logic anyways. Thankfully, Brilliant's comprehensive range of math courses are built for learners at any level, whether you want to brush up on fundamentals or challenge yourself with advanced concepts. They help you build and use formulas to solve real problems in business and everyday life, enhance your visual and spatial problem-solving skills through some of the logic courses, or focus on the essentials with lessons that highlight the most useful, applicable math concepts. So right now, my Park Notes audience can try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days. Just visit brilliant.org/parknotes or scan the QR code on screen, or just click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Okay, so big thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Now let's jump in on a definition of aphorism. Now, if you type aphorism into Google, the definition that comes up will read as follows. An aphorism is a pithy observation that contains a general truth, such as, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, that's a really modern definition of aphorism. I don't think it's that helpful because that also could pick out an adage or a epigram or a proverb. And I think today we're really pragmatic about these things. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of words and they all kind of just mean the same thing. But I don't think that's always been the case. I think these words used to pick out different things. And so I had this hunch about aphorisms and epigrams and proverbs and sententiae, but I didn't have any evidence to back me up until I found the Waste Books by Georg Lichtenberg with this translation and introduction from R.J. Hollingdale. And he gives a really nice analysis of aphorisms and how they're different from other wise sayings. So Hollingdale says that aphorisms are a distinct literary form, and like so many good and bad things, they find their origin in ancient Greece. Now, the word aphorism etymologically comes from a Greek word, aphorism, which means to define, and somehow that word that means define has over the years come to mean a distinct literary form of wise sayings. But Hollingdale says this word goes all the way back to the father of modern medicine, so think of the Hippocratic Oath. Aphorisms go all the way back to that dude. He says the epigram and the sentence or proverb are plainly related to the aphorism. The character of the Romans and their language is equally plainly favorable to aphoristic brevity, and all good writers have tended towards aphorism when they have wanted to summarize summarize an opinion. Nevertheless, the aphorism as a deliberately cultivated literary form, as distinct from something said briefly, did not appear in European literature until the Renaissance, when the aphoristic writings of Erasmus, Michelangelo, Paracelsus, and Bacon, but above all those of the line of French philosophers from Montesquieu to Camfort, bestowed on it the distinctive character by which we now recognize it. So while the aphorism finds its roots in ancient Greece, Hollingdale says it didn't take on its full, unique characteristics until the Renaissance. He goes on to say, in its pure and perfect form, the aphorism is distinguished by 4 qualities occurring together. It is brief, it is isolated, it is witty, and it is philosophical. So he says the fact that it's philosophical marks it off from the epigram. The epigram may be witty and isolated, but it's not necessarily philosophical, whereas the aphorism is. And he says the fact that it's witty marks it off from the proverb or maxim. Its point, though intended seriously, is supposed to strike the reader not with the blunt obviousness of a palpable truth, many hands make light work, but rather in the way the point of a good joke should strike him. In the misfortunes of our best friends, we find something that does not displease us. So it's still stating a universal truth, but it's doing so in a witty, philosophical way that may take a few seconds of reflection to fully understand. Whereas a proverb or a maxim is supposed to hit you right in the face. Here it is, it's super obvious, just know this. Hollingdale continues, in this pure form, the aphorism disdains all giving of reasons and presents only a conclusion, so that it is often plainly intended to provoke instant contradiction in the sense that the payoff line of a joke is intended to provoke instant laughter. So aphorisms are philosophical, but they're different from a lot of other philosophy, which tries to defend and elucidate its argument by giving a bunch of reasons. No, either you get the aphorism or you don't. Here it is. Let those who have ears hear, let those who have eyes see. But if you don't get it, that's not my fault. The wise will interpret and understand the wisdom at play. So again, here are those 4 qualities of an aphorism. An aphorism is brief. An aphorism is isolated, meaning you don't need to read the full treatise or the full book or a full argument or a full philosophical system or a full worldview in order to understand the wisdom of the aphorism. 3, it is witty, and 4, it is philosophical. So that's what Hollingdale says an aphorism in its pure and perfect form is. And he says that in his waste books, Georg Lichtenberg does a great job of displaying this pure and perfect aphorism. So with that understanding of aphorism in mind, why do I think that Gandalf would keep a whole journal full of them? Well, that's because Gandalf always had an aphorism ready just on his tongue to give any of his friends in times of need. He also uses them in combating Cioran the Wise. So one of my favorite aphorisms from Gandalf is when he's actually debating with Saruman. Saruman's trying to convince him to come over to his side or be trapped in the Tower of Orthanc forever. And they're discussing the fact that Saruman the White is now Saruman of many colors. His white cloak is now iridescent and it's all shimmery and there's a bunch of different colors at play. Gandalf says, I liked white better. And Saruman says, yeah, sure, white is a good start. It serves as a beginning. White cloth may be dyed, the white page can be overwritten, and the white light can be broken. To which Gandalf replies, in which case it is no longer white, and he that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. And so in context, Gandalf is talking about Saruman breaking the white light into a prism and making all these different colors. But this is a universal truth. He that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to go against the pure and perfect form of aphorisms by explaining it just a little bit. I think Tolkien, who's putting this aphorism in the mouth of Gandalf, is referencing vivisection, cutting open animals to study them and run experiments on them. I know Tolkien and C.S. Lewis really despised vivisection. And so if you're taking an animal and you're killing it and you're ripping it apart in order to find out, oh, how does this animal reproduce? Or what's up with this thing I don't fully understand? Let me break it in order to better understand it. He's saying through Gandalf, you've left the path of wisdom. The wise man doesn't just break something in order to understand it, doesn't capture and pin it to the wall. Instead, you watch it in situ, you watch it in its environment, you study it and you appreciate it and you care for it. You don't just break stuff in your scientific pursuit, that's unwise. If you break things to find out what they are, you've left the path of wisdom. In the movie version of The Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf says, many that live deserve death, some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo? Do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. Even the very wise cannot see all ends. And here's a related one from the first Hobbit movie. True courage is about knowing not when to take a life, but when to spare one. And I think both of those might be in reference to Gollum. Here's another one from The Hobbit. The world is not in your books and maps, it's out there. Here's one from the Return of the King movie. Death is just another path, one that we must all take. So you're starting to see the theme here. Gandalf is an old sage. He's an old wizard, so he ought to be wise, but he's always got these aphorisms right there on his tongue. Now, some of these may be proverbs or adages. They may not be pure and perfect aphorisms, but some of these definitely are. Think of that fantastic line from The Fellowship of the Ring when Frodo says that Gandalf's late. A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. I mean, that is a perfect aphorism. Here's another really terse, just succinct one from the book version of The Two Towers. A treacherous weapon is ever a danger to the hand. That's so good. That's more than a proverb. That takes a second to think about. It's not just about weapons, but it's like an aphoristic way of saying he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. If you're going to use a treacherous weapon against your foes, be careful because that same treacherous weapon can also harm your own hand. I love that. That's so good. Here's another really good one. Only a small part is played in great deeds by any hero. That could have a few different meanings here. Does that mean that heroes aren't all that important because the little people are also important in any great deed being accomplished? Or does it mean that the time to be a hero is super short and you have to step into that when it's time to do that? Like, there's a lot to chew on here. And I think that makes it more of this rich understanding of an aphorism. So I could just keep on sharing a bunch of Gandalf quotes. I could just read The Hobbit to you guys, but I'm not going to do that. I think I made my point. Gandalf is an aphoristic thinker. If Gandalf kept a journal with him on his journeys, he would definitely be filling his journal with aphorisms. So if aphorisms are such a cool way to do philosophy, how come they're so out of fashion today? Why don't more philosophers do them? Why isn't this a really common practice for us to just keep our own notebooks full of aphorisms that we've made up? Well, firstly, writing aphorisms that actually have the ring of truth to them, it's pretty hard to do. You have to think really critically, but you also have to be kind of clever and philosophical. You have to be short and to the point, and that kind of thinking is super hard. It also feels a little bit pretentious to say, well, I'm going to be a sage today and write down all the wisdom that I've gleaned. Well, who am I to write down a bunch of wisdom? Well, yeah, if you're someone who's never practiced giving wise sayings, then you're not someone who can do that. So I think you should start practicing writing down aphorisms and generating them yourself. But another reason that aphorisms have fallen out of favor with philosophers, at least according to this introduction from Hollingdale, is that after the Renaissance, philosophers sought big philosophical pictures of the world. They wanted to build philosophical systems. And the aphorism is just not that. One of the key qualities of an aphorism is that they're isolated, that they don't need to fit into some kind of system in order to be interpreted and appreciated and understood. So philosophers like Georg Lichtenberg did not rise in prominence like other philosophers. Philosophers like René Descartes and Kant and some of these other system builders. Hegel and then Marx, right? Like people who were trying to take a comprehensive view of the world, that was really in style. And that followed all the way up into the 1900s with the British idealists. And it was only after them that people started getting back to piecemeal type philosophizing. So all that to say, there are some accidents of history that have led to the demise of aphoristic philosophy. But that's a real shame because I think with the loss of the aphorism, we've also lost some of our sages. People who would have really excelled at generating their own aphorisms and passing those on to us probably didn't pursue it because that wasn't really popular. So let's make aphorisms popular again. Let's all start keeping our own journals full of aphorisms. So how might we do that? How might we go about creating our own aphorisms? Well, we need really good examples. So read The Lord of the Rings and learn from Gandalf, but also read the Waste Books by Georg Lichtenberg. This is super duper good. It's the best of 4 or 5 of his notebooks where people have abstracted out the best aphorisms and put them all in one book for us to read and meditate on. So here's one I really like by Lichtenberg. Give strength to my good resolutions is a plea that could stand in the Lord's Prayer. So he's saying this is such a good saying that it could fit in the Lord's Prayer. Give strength to my good resolutions. Those things that I want to do, that I'm resolved to do, that I'm resolute to do, give me strength to actually do them so I don't have like acrasia, so I don't have this weakness of the will to not do what I want to do. Give me the strength to actually do what I think is good. Here's another really good one. What you have to do to learn to write like Shakespeare is very far removed from reading him. If you want to be like Shakespeare, you can't just read Shakespeare. You have to do the things that Shakespeare did in order to become Shakespeare himself, which is way harder than just reading his plays. You have to become a type of person. I really like that one. Here's a really witty one. The fly that does not want to be swatted is safest if it sits on the fly swat. Listen to that one again. The fly that does not want to be swatted is safest if it sits on the fly swat, the fly swatter. I'm not going to explain that one. That's super good. And then here's just another real one that strikes right at the heart. Every man also has his moral backslide, which he refrains from showing unless he has to, and keeps covered as long as possible with the trousers of decorum. With the trousers of decorum, of acting right, of acting civilized. So you're pulling up your trousers of decorum and you're hiding your nakedness. You're hiding the fact that you're backslidden, that you've gone back down into moral decay. You're not going to show that to people because you're wearing the trousers of decorum. That's so good. So those are just a couple from Georg Lichtenberg in his Waste books. You can find a link to this exact one with the introduction by Hollingdale in the description. If you buy from that link, you'll be supporting my channel. So a few others that you may enjoy would be Camus' Notebooks. It's 3 volumes. Actually, one of you guys sent these to me. Thank you so much. That was really cool. You sent me 2, and then I found the 3rd one on eBay. These are really cool. Camus is using these notebooks as his writing source. So sometimes he has quotes in there, but sometimes he's putting his own aphorisms in here, and that's really cool. So you might be interested in these. I'm not sure if you can find them easily. I found one of them on eBay, and then again, one of you guys sent me the other 2. I think the person that sent me these is a librarian. So super cool, like that's what librarians should be doing. Thank you so much. But another one that will be super easy to get is Pascal's Pensées. This was meant to be a work of Christian apologetics, a defense of the faith. It was supposed to be Christian persuasion. Hey, you should be a Christian as well. But it ended up more as a book of aphorisms that was published posthumously. He didn't finish the book. He died, he passed away, and then someone collected these from his notebooks and published them as the Pensées, the thoughts. So there's a lot of really famous aphorisms in here. Pascal says, the heart has its reasons of which reason knows nothing. We know this in countless ways. I say that it is natural for the heart to love the universal being or itself, according to its allegiance, and it hardens itself against either as it chooses. You have rejected one and kept the other. Is it reason that makes you love yourself? And so he's saying, even though we think that we are such rational animals, the heart has its own reasons that reason doesn't even know about. So he's talking about this universal experience of the war between reason and our affections. And Pascal's saying that actually the affections run deeper. And so even though we can rationalize our decisions, it's really the heart that's pulling the strings. That's super profound. There are way too many in here for me to read. I don't know if you guys can see that, but this whole book is marked up and chewed up, and I've marked off so many. It's unbelievable how many wise sayings he has in here. Here's another really good aphorism. There is nothing so consistent with reason as the denial of reason. And here's one of my favorites. It's a little bit longer of an aphorism, but I think it still is a pure and perfect aphorism. It's Pascal's thinking reed. He says, man is only a reed, the weakest in nature, but he is still a thinking reed. There is no need for the whole universe to take up arms to crush him. A vapor, a drop of water is enough to kill him. But even if the universe were to crush him, man would still be nobler than his slayer, because he knows that he is dying and the advantage the universe has over him. The universe knows none of this. Thus, all our dignity consists in thought. It is on thought that we must depend for our recovery, not on space and time, which we can never fill. Let us then strive to think well. That is the basic principle of morality. Okay, let me read one more. This is super, super good. Instinct, reason. We have an incapacity for proving anything which no amount of dogmatism can overcome. We have an idea of truth which no amount of skepticism can overcome. So we have this dogmatism that just holds on no matter what proofs come our way. No, I don't care. We're super capable of being dogmatic even against reason. So that's detrimental to the pursuit of truth when our dogma is untrue. But we also have this idea of truth that no amount of skepticism can overcome. So we're at this really weird intersection between dogmatism and skepticism. So that's Pascal's Pensées. I definitely recommend you grab this book. I really like the Penguin Classics edition. I think there's an Oxford World Classics or whatever that's really good as well, but I love the Penguin Classics. Okay, so the next one is hard for me to pronounce. It's another French one from the same time as Pascal, but I don't know how to say this. I'm not gonna look super stupid doing it. I asked one of my French philosopher friends, Guillaume Bignon, to help me with this, and here's what he said.
La Rochefoucauld.
La Rochefoucauld. La Rochefoucauld. La Rochefoucauld. Okay, so that's as close as I'm going to get. This is La Rochefoucauld, and it's his collected Maxims. This is an Oxford University Press book. This one's pretty bleak, pretty dark. He's got like a pretty pessimistic view. This edition has the French on this side and the English on this side, which is super cool. I don't know French, but if you do, that would be really great to see both the English and the French next to each other. So I haven't given this one a full read yet, but I found a couple aphorisms that I want to share with you guys. So here we go. The wisest people are wise in insignificant things, but they are hardly ever wise in the things that matter most to them. I think that has the ring of truth to it. You think of someone who's super duper wise and you think of the rest of their life and you're like, man, I don't know if I would trade places with that person. I've seen this in my own life. Some people think that I'm pretty wise, but I'm pretty dumb in a lot of areas of my life. So much so that at least once a week people say, wow, I can't believe someone like you wouldn't understand that. It's like, dude, don't puff me up. Don't put me on a pedestal. I know a little bit about philosophy. Doesn't mean I always get oil changes when I should, or tire rotations, or like really practical things in my life that I need to live well. Yeah, I am still working on those things. And I'm not even like a wise sage or anything like that. So once more, the wisest people are wise in insignificant things, but they are hardly ever wise in the things that matter most to them. So think the wise businessman whose family's falling apart. That's a bummer. Like I said, this one is going to be more pessimistic. Let me just read one more. This one's pretty good. You cannot answer for your courage when you have never been in danger. So how do you know if you're courageous if you've never been tested before? You've never been in a situation where your courage has been tested. So how do you know if you're going to be courageous or not? I think there are certain ways you can prepare for this, but really, I don't think you know until you're in that situation. And you may surprise yourself one way or the other. So that's La Rochefoucauld. Again, sorry about the pronunciation. I did try my best. And then last is N Cioran. Probably not pronouncing that right either, but this is The Trouble with Being Born. And this one's translated by Richard Howard. This one's going to be a little bit more existentially, probably a little bit more like Camus than Pascal, but let me just read a couple for us. Whereas any sentence one has to write requires a pretense of invention, it takes little enough attention to enter into a text, even a difficult one. To scribble a postcard comes closer to creative activity than to read the phenomenology of mind. So there I think he's referencing Hegel's phenomenology of spirit, or maybe there is a phenomenology of mind book, or maybe mind and spirit is being translated in the same way. But whatever the case, to read absolute idealists or phenomenologists is a tough thing to do. But what he's saying is that even writing your own sentence has more to do with invention and creativity than reading a massive, difficult book. Here's another really pessimistic one. The sole means of protecting your solitude is to offend everyone, beginning with those you love. So maybe you could take this in a positive way and be like, hey, look, maybe I don't want my solitude that much if it's going to cost me everyone I love. Or you could take it as a manual. Well, I really want my solitude, so let me go piss off everyone I know, starting with my loved ones. And then here's one more for you. Progress is the injustice each generation commits with regard to its predecessor. All right, no explanation. Just get that if you get it. Okay, so there are 4 book recommendations plus those 3 notebooks by Camus. If you guys want to prime the pump for creating your own book of aphorisms, these would be good ones to start with. Okay, so now let me put myself out there a little bit. I've been keeping my own book of aphorisms. I've really enjoyed it, and I feel like it does get me into this sage stage in my mind. And yes, I do have to fight feeling like I'm being presumptuous, feeling that embarrassment of like, man, I have nothing to say, or wow, I think this is really wise. Look at how wise I am. Oh man. Yeah, just you have to put that out of your mind. Screw that. This is for you. I'm reading these to you guys, hopefully to motivate you to get started here. But if not, I would have never shared this with anyone. You don't have to share this with anyone. Just use this journal to start honing your skills, to start writing aphoristically. And maybe you end up using 1 or 2 in like a Facebook post, or if you're writing something, you throw that in there. But you never know if you have that sage in you unless you actually put yourself out there and try. Like, start doing this. So hopefully this motivates you and doesn't make you cringe. So again, the criteria that I'm trying to shoot for, I'm trying to make these aphorisms brief, isolated, witty, and philosophical. Okay, so here we go. I don't think that these are amazing or anything like that, but here's what I've been working on. Rational animals are the only creatures blessed with the ability to cry, Why me? To be a philosopher is to serve as the wise man of one's community, while being appreciated only by those occupying future communities. Sage is an honorific that may be applied only by those less endowed with wisdom to those apparently saturated with it. Can you imagine a wise man boasting of his wisdom? Yet why should we value the judgment of those less acquainted with wisdom when it comes to membership in the set of sages? Why are dogs more loyal than even the best of human companions? Who's ever heard of a dog stealing his master's retirement fund or running off with his wife? Perhaps intelligence and fraternity are in an inverse relationship. Modern academics would rather sneer and titter at the idea of a sage than pursue it as an end. How insane. Two dreads always threaten our sense of ease, working our lives away, never enjoying the fruits of our labor, stopping to smell the flowers and ending up selling them on the side of the road. The one who is most desperate for power is the one who should be kept furthest from the reins. Man has forgotten his lofty status as imago, only to reinvent himself as a tiny god, one amongst billions. Ours is a generation devoid of sages, too foolish to know they're missing. Today's theologians would rather live in the past, but for the ins and outs of daily life. And then just one more for us here. The pen is mightier than the sword, yet the sword may still cut my hand off. What's the moral here? Okay, so there's just a couple of the aphorisms that I've been working on. I hope to fill this whole thing up, and it might be fun for my daughter to see later in life. Here's what Dad thought was wise. Maybe she'll get a laugh out of a couple of them. I don't have any grand designs to get this published or anything like that. I don't think of it that way. I think that what I'm doing in keeping a journal full of aphorisms is, one, following on in a tradition that has been lost but shouldn't be, the wisdom tradition of philosophy, and two, hopefully in doing this, I will become that type of person who can have an aphorism ready on his tongue. I need to practice thinking like a sage if I want to become one later in my life. And so this is me practicing sagery, practicing being like Gandalf the Grey. So that's it. There's a definition of aphorisms. I gave you guys 4 qualities of a pure and perfect aphorism according to Hollandale. Give you guys some book recommendations. I think I made my point that Gandalf would have kept a journal full of aphorisms himself, and then I read you guys some of mine. Hopefully we're not too embarrassing there. So I think you guys should do this. If you're a philosopher listening or an aspiring philosopher, definitely do this. Let's bring that back into our tradition. If you're not a philosopher, that's okay too. I think you can come up with aphorisms, and I think it'd be good for your mind. I think it would keep you sharp. I think aphorisms are beautiful things, and this is a writing style that I want to see brought back. So if you guys made it this far into the video, then you're awesome. Leave me a wizard emoji in the comments so I know who the real ones are. And I want to hear from you guys. What's your favorite aphorism? Leave that in the comments so we can make the comment section into a aphorism commonplace book. That'd be awesome. And then if you like this video, make sure to leave me a like. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. That's going to do it for now. I'll catch you guys next time.